right. Hi, and welcome to this week's edition of the Carvel Community Meeting. Today's date is Monday, May 3rd, 2021. Please read and abide by our code of conduct when you are attending these meetings. And just a reminder, these are being recorded and uploaded to our YouTube playlist. If you have anything you wish to discuss with the team, you can add that to the agenda here down at the bottom with the discussion topics or the triage help. For anything that we do not get to today, we will move those items to our office hours or to the next community meeting. Our office hours are held every second and fourth Thursday of the month at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time, 2:30 p.m. Eastern time. And our Carvel community meetings are every Monday at that same time, 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. The next time we will meet for office hours will be May 13th. So if you haven't joined us for one of those and you have anything that you wish to bring up with the team, that would be a good opportunity as well. This week is actually a really special week as KubeCon, Cloud Native Con Europe virtual begins tomorrow, and Carvel is participating in a few different ways. First, we do have a session tomorrow, May 4th at 5:40 a.m. Pacific time, and that is over the Kubernetes package management using Unix philosophy with Carvel. And then on May 6th, we have live office hours, which are going to be held at the VMware virtual booth at 5 a.m. to 5:30 a.m. So that'll have a couple of the Carvel maintainers, and they can give you a little bit of an intro on Carvel, and then just discuss anything you wish to bring to the team. So if you're attending KubeCon, we invite you to one of those two options. And then lastly, we will have the Carvel demo playing the whole time at the virtual booth for VMware. And you can click on the agenda for more information on all these different options at KubeCon Europe. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and kick it on over to Aaron Hurley to go over the rest of today's agenda.
All right, thank you, Nancy. So we'll start with some quick status updates. So we have the YTT schemas V1 track in flight. Would anyone like to speak as to the past week's progress?
Yeah, we're still charging along here. There's a couple of aspects that we're tackling right now. The biggest chunk right now is being able to include multiple schemas so that you can either break them apart as you need to as an author, or as someone who's consuming someone else's YTT library, being able to add your own if you're going to include additional templating. So that's a chunk. And then another part is in how we're expanding. We have one more type that we want to include in the overall type system to get to sort of an MVP, which is the ability to say, well, allow any type. So we're working on how to make that work well with the rest of the typing work that we're doing. So there's quite a bit of progress. It's some of it's intangible. So, but we're moving along there.
Sounds good. Thank you. Yep.
Did anybody else who was working on this last week, do you have anything else that maybe I missed? Okay, cool. Get thumbs up. Thanks.
Cool. And then we also are actively defining the schemas V2 work. We have these two proposals going on right now. Any folks want to share any updates or comments on these?
Yeah, we're starting to round the last lap here on the plain YAML as data values. Pretty exciting there. There's a few things to nip and tuck on the proposal itself. We're actually even getting started. Helen and I were just working on starting to write some stories that will be there regardless of how some of these details iron out. So we're getting ready to be able to pull the trigger on that work as well. And then nothing much different from the Open API side in terms of the base level export feature. Joao has gotten us set up. We're kind of ready to go when that becomes the next priority. So we have a reasonable definition of that first portion of that. We still have more work that we're doing, more research that we're doing in terms of how do we help support the integrators who are using schema information to generate their UI. They'll need more than just types. And so we're working on how to nail down exactly what that is and in what priority should we tackle this.
Cool, thank you. And then just to call out, we do have 2 discussion topics here. So we'll try to make sure we have room to cover those today. So jumping into this week's backlog, let's see what stories we have to discuss. So on the schemas track, we have these 2 3-pointers in flight. We have another 3-pointer pointed. Is that substantial for right now?
It actually does seem like that. We could talk about that other story, but maybe we should save that time for the discussion. And if we have time left over, we could come back to this. Does that seem okay? Okay.
Okay. If that's the case, then are there other stories that people want to discuss today? Or should we head over to discussions? All right, let's start with discussions then. I'm curious if the topic owners have a rough swag as to how much time would be needed for each of these topics. I mainly just want to like order them in the right way, I guess.
I think it depends on like how familiar folks are with the like proposal listed here. Does anyone? I know I just sent a message about it last Friday when most people were probably gone. So I think we decided to add this as a discussion topic a little late. If folks don't really have context or have thoughts to air about it, maybe we could delay it till next week or some other forum.
I wouldn't mind if you wanted to give a quick overview. We've found that useful in the past to just kind of have the author kind of hit some highlights, and then that can make it easier to dig in and hang details off that. Is that appropriate here?
Sure. Let me pull it up. No. The other item, the YTT playground item, I don't think it should take longer than 15 minutes, maybe less, for context there.
Okay, maybe if that's the case, maybe we can start with the YTT one, and then for folks that are not interested in the kapp-controller proposal, they could drop off. Does that sound all right to people? Cool. Yeah, would someone like to speak to the YTT playground topic?
Yeah, I can do that. I can also share my screen. So recently we encountered 2 bits of very similar feedback from users we were assisting through Slack. And that is that when navigating to the playground, they were unaware of 2 additional sections of examples that you can pull up here. helping with simple overlay examples or getting started through a step-by-step tutorial here. We see these as pretty valuable if you're trying to learn YTT or use YTT with set examples that you can copy paste from, etc. And we want to know if there's a way that we can make them more visible to the user in an elegant way, or a way that we can make these examples easier to navigate to. And we thought just bringing this up in this forum would allow people to give any feedback that they have on this playground in general, as well as hopefully we can pull as many opinions in to make this as good as possible. So if anyone has any thoughts or ideas or people we should ask.
I can't speak to any experience of not noticing this myself because I helped to work on this. But as an idea, like since discoverability is the issue here, what if the default view is the one that we're seeing right now, where all of the examples are expanded? And then we can look out for feedback on whether this page is too busy and if people are unable to find what they need because there's too much text. That's one way that we could get like some validation on that discoverability is the issue and that sort of thing.
I agree with that. I think that's like the simplest way to go about it. One thing we would have to modify though is to be explicit which one out of all the list of items here we're displaying in the bottom, because it loses that connection between what you're seeing versus which item is selected at the above. So highlighting could be an easy way to solve that.
Great point.
What if there's something in here about how the boxes above don't look like the right widget? Like, are they supposed to be buttons? Are they toggles? I wonder if there's other examples out there of groups, like just UI design patterns that like maybe we just like didn't use a good one here, and that like just thumbing through a design patterns site or book might elicit some ideas of ways of showing that this higher level thing contains these lower level things or something, or a toggle.
I would say tabs solve that quite easily, because then you can group those high levels together and you know which one selected.
Yeah, in the end, they look like tabs, but because there's no area defining what the tab is, it loses the idea that that is in fact a tab, I think.
I remember having discussions with some folks, and again, this was like without, like user testing or anything in the room, of like wanting to be able to potentially have this view. Like there might be somebody who's like, okay, I want to see everything so I can kind of visually scan through here, but also not wanting to overwhelm the user as well. So if it were just tabs alone, then I don't know if that would preclude being able to sort of open everything.
That's a good point. What I was saying is that they look like tabs, but because there's no thing that limits them, they stop looking like a real thing that you can click on it. It's like, I think if we want to do, because of the way they are, they look like the tab thingy on top. If they had like an area, we would know that the tabs are on top, right? Maybe that the design that we have there, it's not really helpful. And if we really want to expand them all, to be fair, I don't really know, but maybe the buttons should be vertical and be underneath each section. Like the basics opens the basics. If they are all closed, there are like 3 buttons. And when you open it, it just moves the two to bottom, some sort of like an accordion or something. That way you could expand them 3 of them.
Wow. I wonder what would happen if we just put the box, like literally like just one move, just like put a border, like a 1 pixel border and go. Does that work? I like your idea of like having the collapse piece be part of the header or something. And then it's sort of obvious that like there's something in there.
I think another piece to this that maybe I at least struggle with sometimes is that I feel like a lot of the times the titles in here don't always like fully capture like what is shown in an example sometime. And if there was some type of search functionality by which you could kind of see subtopics of the examples would be kind of interesting. For instance, like the overlay example, I think really focuses on like the remove aspects of overlays. Or maybe it's a different one, but like there are always these like there are always like topics like within it that I feel like are very often not captured by a title itself. And I'm wondering if there would be a way to add like some like tags or something that someone could like search through to like find examples kind of a little bit more easy. That's not like the perfect way to do it, but that's something I personally like struggle as far as like finding useful examples through the site.
Capturing this feedback in some form so that we can eventually act on it later.
Yeah, I've been writing up some notes, but we also have this video to rewatch if we need to. But I think that a lot of this feedback has been really, really valuable in that we can craft a story to immediately make some design changes and then maybe research some improvements on those changes and see what feedback we get from there.
Cool. That sounds good. Does that sound like a fair next step then? Just draft a story and we can move the discussion to there. Cool. Thank you. Eli, should we hop to the splitting the package CR proposal topic?
Sure. I can share my screen. So this is basically a proposal that proposes that we take the existing package CR, which is a CR that sort of represents a generic app and allows consumers to like easily create an app CR without knowing about an app CR. So they can see that FluentBit is available in their cluster and that's available as a package and then install it. And currently the package CR is a CR that contains the entire spec of how to do that. So informing kapp-controller, how to fetch, template, and deploy an app, as well as like a lot of metadata around the package itself. So like a logo or a short and long description, some of the like higher level stuff about the package. And each package CR currently has a version. So anytime you're fetching a new bundle from a registry to deploy, you would bump the version. Anytime you make a change to the spec, et cetera, you bump the version, which sort of leads to these two side effects. One being that now if I want to see what packages are available in the cluster, and I use like a kubectl get packages, I now get an entry for every single version of every single package in the cluster. And that's not a great experience if I'm just trying to figure out what is available in the cluster. And you get a lot of duplication this way because like a logo isn't something that's probably versioned. You don't need to repeat it for every version of the package, but because the package CR itself is versioned, you would have to include the logo on every version. So due to those two sort of poor experiences, we're proposing to like split out the package CR into two new CRs, one being the package CR, which will just sort of contain the high level information of the package, stuff that's likely not versioned. So short, long description, logo, that sort of info here. And then to go along with that, a package version CR. So this is where you'll put all the versioned information. So what are we actually fetching? How are we templating it? What are we deploying? Things that are likely to change per version. And then the package version CR will reference back to like what package it's part of. So here, this references back to this package. So they're connected in that way. And then for an installed package, you're now just specifying what package you'd like to install and what version to install, and kapp-controller will find the package version that goes along with it. So now in this world, discovering packages becomes a lot easier because there's just one entry for each unique package. So you can kubectl get packages and you'll get a list of just a single entry per package. Then taking that to package versions, you're able to filter by a specific package name and get a list of all the versions that are available. So it's a little bit more natural. And then because this is now a unique resource, there's only one, your high level info, like icon and all other unversioned data isn't repeated per version. So you get to save some space in that sense too. And that's pretty much it. There's a few open questions here around what do we do, like how does this affect package repositories? And what do we do when there's a collision of packages? So the effect on package repository is now what happens when there's a package version without a corresponding package. Is that valid? And our answer to that is no, it's not valid, but instead of requiring the user to manually create that package CR, if kapp-controller sees that you're installing a package version and there is no corresponding package, it will just create an empty one for you in the cluster. And then there's this other question of what do we do when two repos declare the same package, but they're slightly different? Because repos are syncing every so often, you'll just flip back and forth between the two and you won't really know what is in your cluster at any given time, which is undesirable. So that's an open question, but that's also a question that exists in today's world of packaging. So if you have a package with the same name and version in today's world, but a slightly different description or spec, you run into the same issue of how do you pick one repo or one package from a repo over the other? So we're punting on that, answering that question for now, and sort of calling that out of scope of this proposal.
I haven't fully read this proposal, but when you split a package to a package and a package version CR, does this proposal address any upgrading issues? Like how do you upgrade from when you just had package to you have package and package versions?
So all of these releases are still in alpha. So we haven't given any backwards compatibility guarantees, and we're still just sort of trying to get feedback.
So that's like out of scope, which is
we're not worried about
nice.
that.
All right, cool.
I'm wondering if like some of the general motivation, just to understand, like, was there something that we experienced that made it seem clear that there would be this overwhelm effect? So I sense an assumption in there that I'm going to have many different versions of a given package installed, and that's part of what creates the overwhelm. What do we think is going to cause that, rather than assume the opposite, that there would be generally a smaller number of versions of any given package on a cluster?
For the most part, I think because you'll be getting any versions of any package. So if you have 40 packages each with 10 versions, you're already at 400 list entries. So it doesn't take much to sort of blow up in that sense. And if you're packaging repos, I mean, 3 or 4 repos could result in lots of packages, especially as time goes on and new versions are released. And the assumption I think we're making is that repos aren't trimming out versions as they go. So every new version just increases the number. Obviously, until versions are out of support or whatever, then they'll get taken out. But
I see. So to the repositories representing what are intended to be used as a source of software are going to naturally be big.
Yeah.
Okay?
And
mhm.
I was just to say, it seems safer to sort of expect, in the worst case, lots of packages versus designing for something small.
That's fair. And then the other part I heard in there was that we expect these clusters to be multi-tenant, and so there's probably multiple sources that might also contribute to the number of packages that could be installed.
Yeah, we definitely expect more than one repository eventually.
Okay. Cool. Thank you for that. It does also conceptually make sense to me that there'll be algorithms we'd like to write against a package, and that's harder to do now because it's got the version baked into it. Be sort of easier to talk about things that I don't care what version, like this thing goes from here to here, I don't know, or expunge everything, that sort of easier to reason about.
Yeah, definitely. I think that really shows up in like the just discovery phase of what's there on the cluster.
This is interesting because I did not expect this to be a problem. At least the way I was looking at the full package CR API and like the usage of it, I was expecting these repositories to be catered repositories that contained only 1 or 2 versions per package. And why is that? Because I assume that if we want to allow people to have, like, if you're a cluster operator and you're managing a cluster, you want to sanction just 1 or 2 versions of a particular software for people to use. So in theory, you shouldn't have like thousands of options because they need to be passed through security and so on. Like if we're talking about in an environment that's more enterprisey, I think it's going to be very expensive to have like thousands of possible versions for people just to piggyback from. So I never expected this to be exactly a problem. Did we got any feedback from our users saying that this is becoming a problem or something like that?
Not initially, no. I think right now it's still pretty early in the fact that there's only a few like development packages that exist and repos that exist. So it's not reaching numbers we'd expect. But yeah, I don't know. I can't speak much to that other than like just preparing for the worst case of there's tons and trying to make that a good experience, which would still provide a good experience for there's not very many. So
like as like a general concept, I think it's an interesting concept. Like in this separation, I see some problems, like you mentioned, the problems of like competition between two repositories that can have the same package definition, or like a little bit of a different package definition. What you do about that? I think this could be like a big problem. Or even if for some reason, as you mentioned, like if the logo changes, which is not something that's unheard of, then what logo are you going to display? Because some versions have a particular logo, some other versions have a different logo, or some sort of like a description of a particular version. So I think like this centralization, it is good if we assume that all those things that we are centralizing are static, but I'm not 100% sure they are. Because like companies change products names, companies change logos of the products pretty often. So that's another thing to take into account there.
yeah, I don't think we're not assuming that they're static. We're just assuming that when you make an icon update, like you likely don't want that to your old icon to still apply to all other versions. Like your package is sort of the current description or long description of like what the package is providing, what it is at a high level, and some other various information that gets updated and is able to change, but doesn't retroactively apply. And then every release will have its release notes and everything that gives a little bit more detail. Like you go to a GitHub README or something, and it's got a logo and a description of what the repo is about. But that is sort of like a high level description. And then you can go into the release notes and see like, okay, here's what's changed in all the releases. But the README is sort of like here's at a high level what this tool does. So we sort of thinking of the package CR as a place for that information. And then we can drill further into versions and what each version does.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I can see arguments for both sides. So like another thing that is like now you're forcing people to always provide a package CR, even though if you create it automatically, if you just have a package version, I think then it kind of beats the purpose of having this separation. So you're kind of always forcing people to have on their repositories like always a version of this package CR. And this could hype even more the problem of having like different versions, different repositories that have different versions of this package CR that have a little bit of a different things. So for example, like if you add a maintainer to a particular package, right? Like in one side, you have it, in the other side, you don't. And if you do not provide a package CR, then you cannot update that information. So in the end, I understand it, and I like this separation, but it feels like there are some issues that maybe should be addressed. And like, even though you said that y'all are gonna just punt on the idea of thinking what to do when you have a collision, I think maybe this is something that y'all should try to solve first. Try to understand like what's the best approach to that before like going and implementing this this proposal. I don't know.
The reason, like, we are actively thinking about that. Like, we're also coming up with ideas around that and everything too currently. The reason that we don't think it is a blocker to this proposal is because it exists today. So even if packages are versioned, so they contain the same thing, it could be likely that a release note gets updated or like a CVE gets added in one repo, but the other doesn't get that update. And then when the user, if the user ends up having both those repos, you still have a collision, even though they're versioned. So resolving that collision felt out of scope or not a blocker to this because it currently exists. So it's a problem that like we need to solve no matter what we do. And that's why we're working on that separately from this.
I think another benefit to, I guess, like actually implementing this soon is that we're still under the alpha release umbrella, and we can make these changes. So we could always change back if we hear from package authors saying like, oh, like I created, packages in the old way and it was much better. So there is like still that room. Like this is certainly not final. But we're definitely trying to prioritize more of these API changes up front so that we can get feedback on them sooner.
As like an idea, like you don't need to have a lot of packages built in order to test out the current behavior. You can just mock out something and get people into a room and just ask them like, just use Kubernetes and their kubectl here and find out what packages you have installed, and then you just give them like a lot and see how they navigate that without having to incur in the cost of having to build something new that people might not work for people. So maybe you should like invest a little bit of time to do some sort of like preemptive investigation to see if like even this new approach that y'all are doing, it fits better than the current one, or if there might be another way that could solve this problem in a little bit better, like that resonates better with our customers. So just an idea.
Definitely check that out.
And then roughly from a timeline perspective, Eli, when are you hoping to, I don't know, try to gain consensus around this proposal?
We don't have a date yet, but it would be nice to do this sooner rather than later. As like Aaron said, we'd like to get this done while we still are in like a very alpha stage. and get any changes out to users that would consume them sooner rather than later. So I don't know, maybe in next week or two, coming to consensus can give us time to do any research that we will do as well. We decide to go that route.
Sounds good. Yeah, for any folks on the call or people watching, please provide feedback as soon as you can. I would definitely lean towards trying to wrap this up sooner. So I will encourage that. Cool. Anyone else have any other questions or comments? Alrighty. Let's see, we have a little bit of time left. Are there any other topics people wanted to discuss today?
Really not discuss, but we are in the midst of releasing a new version of image package that contains some performance improvements. So I think by today we should have a new version out. I think the release is already in GitHub, but not all the channels are updated yet. So we're in the midst of doing that. Another thing is about the copy rename proposal for image package. I know that we've been in a little bit of a silence period because nobody was saying anything, and it's still going on. I wrote something into the Carvel channel, so just take a look there. There was some other proposal for the strategies, and eventually I'd like to bring this up maybe on the next community, not maybe the next community meeting or the office hours, try to go through it so we can have some idea what we want to do in terms of those strategies. So take a look. And I think that might be it from my side.
Joao, was that specifically about the names? Like it was a set of names to try and, is that what that is, or is there more to it?
There's more to it. So I link the comment from Jorge, I think, that was proposing a different way of providing strategies. Instead of having this long name that contains all the things that happen on that strategy, you get a shorter name, for example, relative to bundle, and then you have other fields that you can set. So I want also to include this prefix. I want to include that suffix on the strategy. So have more broad strategies, but then that can have little fields that you can change and make it a little bit better. So that's another proposal of how we might do strategies here. And I'd also like to know a little bit more to see if people would be okay with completely removing the overrides section. So I think that would be the other part, that if we remove completely the override section, it's going to make it a little bit easier for this implementation.
Anything else?
Nobody has anything else. So we found another problem with image package that is sort of addressed on this proposal, the rename proposal, and we extracted that out into a new issue. And the problem is if you push a bundle into a registry but do not copy it, when image package is going to try to find if you copied or not a bundle, it tries to see if the images are in the new registry, and then it tries also to find if the images are on the origin registry. The problem is that you might not have credentials to search on the original registry, right? So like we wrote up an issue that is going to try to address that. That is part of what existed on, that was part of the proposal for the rename. And that is like the location file. So we are also in the midst of doing that. So if you run into this problem in image package, know that we're looking into it actively.
I was curious, what exactly were the performance improvements?
So much faster now. Oh my God. Basically, previously we were, so the first step that image package does when it copies the images from one registry to another or from one registry to a tar, it tries to find all the images that needs to copy first. That's like the first step. And that was being done in a sequential fashion. So now what we did, we parallelize all of that. So we are, instead of checking one image at a time, we're checking 5 images at a time to see if they exist and where they exist so they can be copied. So that was the improvement. And afterwards, we also did something else that to see where the images are. Like this part that I said that had a problem right now. So it was also done sequentially. So it first goes to the new registry, see if the image is there. Then it goes to the old registry, the original registry, and see if the image is there. And this was done sequentially for all the images. So two calls to the registries. So this is done in parallel as well. So we were able to, in I don't remember the timings, but we had a bundle that had 30 images on it, and we were able to go from a 2-minute marker from copying to disk to roughly 45 seconds or something like that. So it was like a huge increase, just the fact that we're parallelizing the check to see if the images are present.
Well, thank you.
All right, last chance. Anything else? Cool. We'll wrap up then. So thanks for attending today's community meeting. Check us out at KubeCon tomorrow and a couple days after that. Please let us know if you have any feedback in our Carvel channel in Kubernetes Slack. But have a great Monday. See y'all.